Hello and welcome back. This is Candace from Candoodle, and today I'm going to be showing you how I like to make some quick and easy Christmas cards using one of my all-time favorite stamp sets, the Deck the Halls Turnabout stamp from Concord 9th. So let's get started. So I'm just starting off with my Misty stamping tool. You could definitely use an acrylic block for this, but I find especially when I'm using Turnabout stamps, it makes it so much easier to use the Misty, just in case you don't get the perfect stamping the first time. It gives you a bit more room for error. So I'm just lining up my stamp with the packaging that it comes with, and then I'm going to use my Concord 9th Turnabout jig. You definitely don't need this, but I find it really useful when I'm doing multiples. You could also use a 6x6 piece of paper or even a laminated piece of cardstock. And I'm just taking my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch Neenah 80 pound, and I'm sticking that down right in the center just with some Tombow repositionable adhesive, because I don't want that moving around on my jig as I do any of my stamping. So once that is down, I am going to move on to my inking. So for this first version, I'm going to use some Altenew inks in Frayed Leaf, Forest Glades, and Evergreen, and then we're going to finish it off with some Hero Art Soft Granite. I really like these 3 greens along with the gray, and it's something I did last year that I'm doing again this year. And so I am just going to ink that up. I wanted to show that you can definitely use Turnabout stamps with mini ink cubes. It definitely takes a little bit more time and elbow grease, but it is worth it, especially if you really like the colors you have in the mini ink cubes. And I will show you later how much faster it goes with the full-size ink pads if that's what you have. So I'm just taking a second sheet of cardstock that is cut exactly to the same size, and I'm sticking it down on top with the same repositionable adhesive, and this is because I want to do more than one background at once. So if you use this method, I just find it the easiest because I already know where to line it up because my first paper is stuck there. And you actually only need to attach and unattach it twice for each of your stamping. So I did edit out some of the inking up process throughout a lot of this video, just so you didn't have to sit there and watch me ink up my stamp for many eons, but I am basically just moving through each of my colors. I like to start from lightest and move to the darkest, that way I don't have to clean my stamp in between. I usually do clean it in between, but because these inks are like one shade darker from each other, I didn't with this specific set that I'm using right now. But I am just inking my stamp up, stamping it down, and then turning once clockwise to the right. You could definitely turn to the left too. I just have a tendency to turn to the right, and then I remember what way I am turning my stamp. You'll notice though, because the stamp won't line up if you've forgotten to turn it. And you can see me using a baby wipe just to wipe off the sides of the jig with any additional ink. Just because I have a tendency to smear things, so I didn't want to cause a problem for myself later down the line. And I did clean off my stamp between my last green color and switching to the gray, so I made sure there was no green left on the stamp. And then you can see how much faster that went using the full-size ink pad of the gray compared to the mini inks. But if all you have is mini inks, I have a ton of them. It's definitely still possible to use with these stamp sets. The other thing to be mindful of is just making sure that you're lining up your second piece, or if you're doing multiples, third, fourth, etc., the same way. If you have it flipped backwards, you might stamp it improperly, but you just have to make sure the pattern is lined up with the one that's underneath, and then you should be good to go. But I absolutely love the way these turned out, and I got 2 backgrounds done pretty quickly. So I'm going to give everything a nice wash with my baby wipe, and then we're going to move on to doing background set number 2. So for this time, I'm using some Simon Says dye inks. I'm using Barely Beige, Stone, Willow, and then my last one, I am going to use a Distress Oxide ink in Pine Needles. And I'm just doing the exact same thing that I did last time, and you'll notice it is going quite a bit faster this time because I am using the full-size ink pads. So I'm just going to do my first color, turn it, second color, turn it, etc. And again, I'm only taking on and off that secondary piece twice throughout this because I like to stamp once, turn, stamp again, and then take it off. And it just makes it a little bit easier, I find. So I am also doing a lot more cleaning of my stamp, which I edited out so you didn't have to watch me do that part. But the inks are different this time, so I did clean in between each of them. And the last time I am using the Distress Oxide. If you are doing multiples at once, you're going to want to stamp the second one first and then take it off and stamp the first one, just so you're not reattaching on top of some wet oxide ink because it might smear a little bit. I have off camera cut some of my favorite things stitched Hexagon stacks. I cut the third largest one, and then I am going to stamp Merry and Bright with the Concord 9th Merry and Bright stamp set. And you can see I have 2 hexagons that are going to be the sentiments on my card, but I have a third one hanging around there, and that's because that's a template I made last year. I really like the placement that I got on that one, and it takes a lot of the guesswork out of making the sentiment on the same sort of card. So I have a few things that I've kept as templates in case I ever want to revisit the same card techniques or styles again later. So I also have my little stars that on my template are in gray, but I am heat embossing them with some gold embossing powder. So you're seeing me do that, and then I'm just going to heat set that, and then we are going to move on. So I cut 6 additional rectangles, and I'm just gluing them together with my art glitter glue. So there's going to be 3 rectangles and then the sentiment one on top. I did want something a little bit more sturdy than foam underneath this, just because there was a little bit of warping on the top from that heat embossing that we did, and it gives me an opportunity to use up some of the hexagons that I messed up the stamping on. And then I'm going to take the Merry and Bright die. This is another one from Concord 9th. It's one of my absolute favorites, and I cut it twice from black cardstock and twice from this glitter cardstock. This one is actually from Michael's. I don't get a ton of my craft supplies there because I do like to support smaller companies. However, I really like this glitter paper because it doesn't shed. The glitter is actually inside the paper, so it's a lot less messy, and you can see it doesn't scratch off at all, like even if I take my nail to it. So if you see that at Michael's, you might want to pick it up. I also really like the colors that it comes in. So I've now glued each of my backgrounds down to a card base. I did that off camera because, as you can see, we are rapidly losing daylight. Welcome to Canada. And then I am going to take my Merry and Bright in the glitter, and I'm going to use my art glitter glue, and I'm going to stick that right on top of the black one, but a little bit offset to the right so it looks like it has a drop shadow. I really like the way that this looks, and it sets it apart from that kind of busy background, and I really like the way that it turns out, especially with this die cut. So I am going to glue that right on top of my lighter backgrounds, and as you can see, I'm using one of my favorite tools here, which is my piece of marble countertop. It's a great weight to stick down your die cuts, and I just had it lying around, and I use it on almost every card I make. And then I'm going to stick down the hexagons, and those are my final cards. So I finished 4 cards pretty quickly in only an afternoon. So these are definitely a great idea if you're looking to make some fun, quick, and simple cards, especially if you want to make some of your own pattern paper with that Turnabout stamp set. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate the time that you spend here with me. Don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at CandoodleCreations and subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. I will see you in my next video, which is actually a very special collaboration that's coming out in a couple days. I'll see you then. Bye!